Well, over the last couple of years, since I started doing a lot of DCC installations into S-scale locomotives, I've had the question arise a few times of how do you do it, what supplies do you use, and would you do an article about it? Rather than an article, I thought a video would be a little more instructive for anybody who wants to learn some of the things that I use. I am by no means an expert, only been doing this for a while. I've done probably 30 to 35 engines of different types, brass and others. American models is the typical one that I've done, a number of different American models, types of engines. So what I'll be covering in this video is an American Models E8. You have the Texas Special. This is one that I've completed with a particular set of lighting that I'll talk about, speakers, current keeper, and decoder. So I'm going to actually take this one, which I've not touched yet. It's new old stock, and disassemble it, clean it up, and start to install all of this. I also want to mention that I do have a list of supplies that I use for my DCC conversions. I'm happy to share this with folks if they would like to see it. I have links here to the places where you can buy all of these items. I'll mention these as we go through, but I do keep a comprehensive list of all of the things that I use. First off, I am primarily a Tsunami 2 user, as made by Soundtrax. I use the 2200 series. The reason for that is that you can use a smaller decoder with lower amperage for S-scale. For me, this one is still one that is a very nice size to be able to fit into S-scale locomotives, but it gives you quite a bit of sound power. So I like what it does from a wattage perspective for sound, so I prefer to use something a little bit bigger than what you could use for S-scale. I also have become a regular user of the current keeper. There's two different types that Soundtrax makes of different size and shapes. This is the elongated one. I put this in every installation that I do in order to avoid any issues with dirty track or lack of connectivity. With that, I will go ahead and start disassembling this one and getting it ready to go. Well, first things first, I prefer to disassemble the locomotive and clean the wheels and re-grease it. This one is been around for a while, and likely the grease is either gone or needs to be cleaned out and replaced. I remove the claw style coupler that's more the American Flyer style, and I'll be putting on this, which is a coupler made by San Juan Car Company. It's their Evolution coupler it's actually for 0130, but I like to use them. Their depth helps with decoupling issues. And for the purists, this is a bit large, but I do use these on mine. So to get moving, no need to take the shell off yet. Just going to take off so we can get to the wheels and the gearbox. Okay, yeah, not much grease there, so it needs to be re-greased. I'll be using Label 106 for re-greasing the gears. What I do is I pull each of these out. You've got to be careful. There are springs in there that you don't want to lose. So it's hard to see, but there's a spring there and a spring there that it sits on. I will be using this CRC contact cleaner and protectant, which is a fantastic electrical contact creator to clean the wheels and also to clean the wire pickups. For me, I just load up on a ton of Q-tips and go at it, and then keep myself a little reservoir of the contact cleaner here for me to do the cleaning. I actually am going to be, these are the high rail wheels. I actually am going to be putting scale wheels on this eventually. I will go ahead and get these wheels cleaned though before I put them away. And I'll put some scale wheels on it because I will plan to use this one at train shows with our Houston club. And our club has a modular layout that is code 100 rail, so I need to use the scale wheels. But essentially, I just go to work on these and try to get them as clean as possible. And this will take a while, but you also have to remember, because of that wire pickup there, that you need to clean the inside of the wheel as well. And you'll see on this one, yeah, this has some definitely some past use, quite a bit of past use on it. So this is not new old stock, as I mentioned earlier. This is a pretty well used locomotive. Although it's in excellent shape, there are no issues with any of the aesthetics on it. And I've already checked the motor. The motor does work, so not an issue there. But I just simply go to work cleaning this out. This will take a little while, so I won't waste your time showing you all that. But I am then going to use, I use a couple of different types of lube. This is Label 102, which I will be using on the bushings here when I drop them back into place. But I will be using this Label 106 on the gears themselves, and I simply will put it on all the gears that I can see, and then it'll work its way around when it starts to spin after I get it all in place. But I can pull that one out too, dump a bunch in here. And then I'm also going to grease the gear that's on the axle as well before I get it, put it back in. Put one of the wheel sets back on to give an example. You got to remember, on American models, you have this tiny little insulator on this side. It may not be visible into the camera, but a little black circle around there. That always goes on the side that has the electrical pickup. So all the insulated wheels are going to go on that side. So what I do is I've thoroughly cleaned this thing, including the back side of the wheel that's going to make contact with this wheel wiper. I've also cleaned that wiper. So then I put a bit of oil on the axle here so that these bushings will spin well. And I put oil on the bushings themselves so that they'll slide down in the slots easy and be able to move up and down with the spring. Alright, that's there. And then I take the Label 106 grease and just put plenty on the gear itself. I then take my smallest flathead screwdriver. I'm always double checking to make sure I've got the insulated piece on the outside. I'm going to tuck that wheel wiper in just a bit. Spin these bushings to where they're in the right spot. I didn't show you, but I also had to make sure that the springs were still there. The springs are there. You can see it has a bit of a bounce to all of these. And now I'm just going to put this back on. I mentioned earlier that I am taking off the American Flyer style coupler, and I'm putting on this San Juan Car Company coupler that's much more scale size, although slightly larger. To do that, I need to put a new hole into this tab here that is on the gearbox cover / side frame piece. So I'm simply going to drill a hole right there, and instead of body mounting, you could also body mount this back here. I'm going to do this just so I could handle tight curves as well. Again, for the purists, they would want to do the body mounted. I just want a little more flexibility in mine, so I'm going to drill a hole there and then screw that in. Okay, so now all of the cleaning is done. The wheels have been thoroughly wiped. I used, who knows, probably 30 Q-tips or more, in carefully wiping very hard around each one of the wheels, as well as cleaning the axles on each of them, the wheel wipers. Then, as I showed you earlier, I put on oil on the bushings, I put new grease on the gears and the gearbox, as well as the gears on the axles, put everything back in place. I also had changed the coupler, as I mentioned, drilled a new hole there, used the previous screw, the screw that was already used for this, and put this more scale-like coupler on here. So now it's to take the shell off. So there's 4 of these screws. I've already removed 3 of them. This is the last one here. Always good to have a magnetized screwdriver. And then this particular shell has 2 nodules on the side, so you have to quite carefully pull this apart. And simultaneously lift this out. Okay, what we have here is American Models has a light unit on here. This is all for the lights. I am going to be removing this and simply basically just gutting it, taking all this out, including the lights, because I want to put in my own lights, my own LEDs. So all of this will be coming out. I have to unscrew these 4. Put that in my junk drawer over there. Be needing any of this. So now I've got a fair amount of lighting I just need to cut out of here. I am proceeding with pulling all of these lighting components out. I am going to cut this. I will need this wire. This is the pickup. This is the wire from the wheel pickup, electrical pickup on the right side. I will need this one as well on this side. So that I do want to keep in place. This I also want to reuse. This is what it's called a live chassis, which means that the pickup from the left side of the engine is passing through the wheels up to here, and then this bracket here is essentially carrying the electrical current from the left side. So I'm going to reuse that actually as my point that I will be drawing power from, or drawing the current from the left side of the track. These others are all going to come off. I will my soldering iron just to quickly remove those. The soldering iron, by the way, is a Weller, low wattage. I think it's a 40 watt, yeah. Has served me very well for lots of small soldering. Alright, all of this goes in the trash. And we'll start prepping the engine for connection to the decoder. So I have stripped the ends of these wires, which again are the right side pickups. I have taken out these connectors from my supplies. I buy these by the bunch. I get them off of eBay, incredibly cheap. This is 20 pairs, micro JST, 1.25 4-pin male and female. I use these in every installation I do. The way that I do it, I will cut these to the right length because my decoder is going to go right there. So what I like to do is to glue this here, and the reason I'm doing that is so that I can detach the shell when I need to. So it just makes it easier ongoing for maintenance, light replacement, that kind of thing. So in the end, you'll have this one connecting in here, and it'll be going up to the shell to feed three lights, three light connections that I will have in the shell for the headlight, the Mars light, the dome light, and the number board lights. I will do the number board lights and the dome light on the same circuit with a 4x light fixture. At this point, now I'm going to just begin cutting these and stripping them and getting them ready for connection to the decoder. I'll get the decoder out in just a minute and show you how I'm going to connect to it. Also, just wire strippers. So this is made by Klein Tools. This is a small gauge wire stripper. You can see this one goes down to 32 gauge wire, so quite small wire that can be used with this. This is what I use constantly, essentially, for all of this wire stripping and cutting. Before I take out the decoders, I just thought I would show you this the Tsunami 2. As I mentioned earlier, I buy the 2200 series. I will typically mark them for whichever engine I've bought them for right when I buy them, so I remember which sound this was for. So this is EMD diesel, which covers a bunch of different prime movers, including what was used in the E8s. This is the current keeper, which is a plug-in type. I will show you how to install it in a bit, but now I'm just going to start cutting this open and removing the plug so that I don't do any soldering with the plugs connected. I have now cut and stripped these wires, twisted each one of them. This will now start to get soldered to the proper connections over here for the light connections that I'm making up top. Be back with more. I've got the decoder unpackaged now. All of these wires, of course, are shown here on the instructions that come with the decoder to show you what the purpose of each wire is and how it can be used. I'm now going to trim away all of the plastic coating on here, the shrink wrap coating. I'm going to trim that away so I can pull these plugs out to do the soldering, because you don't want to do the soldering with them connected, or you're going to transmit a whole lot of heat into the circuitry of the decoder. So I always take them out and do all the soldering and plug them back in when I'm ready to start rolling. Okay, so now I have set up, I pulled the plug out of the end of the decoder after trimming it off, trimming off the shrink wrap. I have trimmed the I've cut and trimmed, stripped the 4 wires that are going to feed to the lights in the shell. This is my connector that will connect to the connector that will be up in the shell. I also have got my shrink wrap, so I got a supply of shrink wrap, or I'm sorry, heat shrink. Got a supply of heat shrink here. When I go into a project, I will pre-cut a whole bunch of little ones, because I'm going to use that on each of the wired connections after I solder them. As you see, I have cut them. I've already slid them down on each of the 4 wires. So now it is simply over to doing the soldering. I personally use a 6040 tin lead solder wire with a rosin core, and this one is about I think a 0.8, 0.7 or 0.8 millimeter diameter, but with the rosin core makes it a lot easier. I'm not dealing with putting the rosin on all of them. So now I'm just going to tin. This is a little bit dirty. I need to clean that off. Getting all the wires tinned up there. Same thing here. I'm going to tin all these up. And then it's a matter of positioning these close to each other and carefully soldering them. Ah, that did not work. Alright, what I do is as soon as I have made the connection, I go ahead and hit it with the heat gun. I got to make sure that I don't hit the other heat shrinks with the heat gun, so I'm going to have a problem. So I hit this with the heat gun. Here's my heat gun, another Amazon buy. And shrink that heat shrink right around that connection. Now it is much more secure. So I will now proceed to do that with each of the other ones. So a couple of next steps. I like to go ahead and check for continuity to make sure before I start doing all the soldering that actually connections are working between the wheels and where I'm going to connect the power. So right here I'm going to look between the wheels and then the wires that are coming off of them at the top. So okay, so that's alright, we are good there. Now these wheels on the other side should have continuity with the chassis. Not getting much. Okay, now I am. Okay, all right, I'm good. I've got the continuity that I need. Well, let me just check one more thing, because here's where I'm actually going to attach to. Is this little nub here. So yeah, that's good. Okay, so multimeter off. I've got continuity, so we'll be able to do some good solder connections to that to get the power pickups to the decoder. Now, I did finish this, so that's the plug that goes in the end of the decoder. The decoder I'm going to put right here. I tend to just use some double-sided tape, so I will put some double-sided tape down here, put the decoder in place. I will then hold this in the idealized spot and start to do some of these other connections. So I have to connect this side here. I'm going to connect to red on the decoder. This little piece here that's connecting to the chassis and therefore the left side of the wheels, I will take this black wire and connect to that. And then on decoders, of course, the gray and the orange are going to go back here to motor controls. So I will start all that soldering in just a second. I like to, before I start gluing stuff down, I usually clean off a little bit with alcohol just to make sure the surface is clean and the glue is going to last a long time, or the double-sided tape. In this case, I'm going to glue right here this connector that again is going to connect up to the shelf for lights. I'm going to just scrub this a little bit because I'm going to be putting double-sided tape down here. I'm going to be putting it over here for the speakers, which I'll talk about a little bit later. Okay, so now I'm going to just glue this onto this bracket, just using my favorite CA glue, which is Zap-A-Gap Medium. I will hold that in place, and I'll come back and start doing some soldering in a moment. Okay, so I did a bunch of soldering. So the plug is now in up here. what I did was I glued this on. I think that was the last thing you saw in the last segment. I took the wire coming from the truck and soldered it to the red wire coming out of the plug. I then also connected this other wire from the truck to that same red connection. So you've got current coming from both trucks, the right side of both trucks, to the red wire into the decoder. On the other side, well, and then I also took motor control, this orange line, brought it down here to the bottom lead on the motor. I, on the other side, took the gray motor control, brought it back here to the upper lead on the motor. And then the black wire from the plug comes back here, and as I mentioned earlier, it's going to solder to the chassis, which is live and taking current from the left side. So now all of that is in place. The next thing is I'm going to put speakers right here. I'll go ahead and show you the speakers, and then I'll put them in place and show you what they look like. I am using a brand called Tang Band. The Tang Band are quite large compared to the speakers I would normally use. These also are 4 ohm, and this is an 8 ohm decoder from a sound perspective. So that means I have to wire these in series. But the good news is that gives me 2 nice powerful speakers that I'm going to have a lot of sound coming from. I'm going to glue these in place back here and solder them in series. Then these are the speaker wires that will plug into the decoder itself. I will hook all of that up and show you what that looks like. I also will go ahead and put the Keep Alive in place. I'll put some double-sided tape up here and run this wire down here and plug into the end of the decoder. So that's what's next. Back in a minute. Okay, so now put the speakers in place. So using double-sided tape here at the bottom, I have put this speaker here and this one here. I may need to do a little bit more to secure them, as I have in some other cases. So 2 speakers here. They actually are facing each other. You don't want the sound going out. It's a plastic shell, and it will vibrate that shell, so the sound is going to actually go toward each other. There is a hole in the bottom of the chassis which helps deliver the sound externally. So I've now wired these in series. So the speakers are connected together, and then they now connect to the decoder. The purple wires are the sound wires to the decoder. I also put the current keeper on top here with double-sided tape. A lot of the wires here just scotch taped to the side of the motor itself, going down to these plug-ins here. So speakers are ready to go. Current keeper is ready to go. What I will do next is actually get it on the track and give it a little bit of a test here. Obviously, we've got to do all the lighting in the shell, but I just want to make sure everything is working. So I will do a test run here to make sure that that everything is working properly before we go on to do the light work. Time for our track test. So I got it on the track. I am going to flip on the power right now, and because these Tsunami 2 decoders are defaulted to start up upon track power, we should hear sound right away. And there we go. Okay, so it has started up. The sounds are going to be in all the default sounds, so I will customize it with my JMRI Decoder Pro for the exact prime mover that I want, as well as the horn, bell, and other sounds that I want. But for now, it's all on the defaults. There's the default horn. And of course, like any new decoder, it's set up defaulted at with an address of 03. Let's just take it forward here a bit. Yep. Yeah, so all is working normally, which means I can take this off the track and get back to working on the lights that I'm going to put in the shell. Alright, so we are good to go for the chassis conversion. Now on to the shell. Lights. In this one, I am going to do number board lights, a Mars light, and a headlight. I'm also going to use 2 of these chip lights to put in the dome as cab lights. I use, in all cases, Evans Designs lights. I love their lights. They're fantastic. I buy the 7 to 19 AC/DC lights. These are universal. They've got rectifiers on them. Can be used either way. I use the 1.8 millimeter typically for my headlights and tail lights and Mars lights. I have used the 3 millimeter as well. And then for this, this is a 4x hookup here where just one connection will power 4 chip lights. I'll use 2 of these for the number boards, and I'll use the other 2, like I said, to put in the top of the cab as cab lights. I used to, and normally I will separately control the cab lights and have that as its own light under its own functionality. In these, I've done a few E8s recently. I decided just to do the number board lights and the cab light together. So anytime the number board lights, the cab light's on. I know it's not necessarily prototypical. At least that way you can see my little engineer that I put in. I'll show you him later. But that's the lights I'm going to use. So I've got them out. I always test them before I start to install them to make sure I'm not going through a whole bunch of pain and trouble to install dud lights. So for that reason, I keep just a little... and other reasons, I keep a little DC transformer here by my side so I can test them. And there you go, I'm getting that one's coming on. Alright, next I will check all of these. I'll be back in just a moment to show you how I'm going to glue them in. So what I have here is I have taken the connector, the other end of the connector, the one that will feed the wires in the shell. I've cut them to length. I have twisted the ends of each of the stranded wires for each of the 4, and then I have slid on my heat shrink, and I have tinned each of them with some of the solder. Over here I have taken the 3 light sets and I have connected into this one right here and soldered them together, 3 wires that represent the common end of the light. With the Evans Designs light, they're universal, doesn't matter which end you pick. So I just chose one from each light set to make the common. The common will connect to the black on this, which will then connect to the blue on the decoder. And for the others, I've made sure that these are lining up. The green is going to feed the dome light and the number board lights. The yellow will feed the headlight, and the red will feed the Mars light. So now I'm ready to begin soldering these together. Again, I keep everything. One concern I have with this is that I don't want it to hold the heat on for too long, because I don't want to do anything to burn up the rectifiers or the components of the light. So I want to make these solder moves quick, and then I will hit it with slide the heat shrink on and hit it with the heater to get it nice and secure. So with that, I will start the soldering. I didn't mention this before, but this is quite nice. This is a fairly recent purchase, actually. This solder helper. I had this one that I still use from time to time. It looks like a jumbled mess, but I like the height of these. I can get them right up to my eye level. Okay, so that's the first one. Now we'll just proceed through and do the others, and I'll be back to talk about putting these into the shell. Okay, so let me talk about putting the lights into the shell. So now I have my soldered together piece, the connector, and the wires. So I'm going to do this such that all of these get connected in with some Bondic. So Bondic is UV adhesive. In other words, you pour this in, it stays in liquid form until wherever you want to bind something. When you're ready to harden it and turn it into a holding adhesive, then you hit it with a UV light. Now Bondic, you can buy it with the UV light. Of course, I did buy it with the UV light. I just went out and bought this off of Amazon, just a little more durable than the one that comes with the kit, and a little more powerful UV light. With Bondic, you have to hold the light on for about 7 to 8 seconds for it to seal up. The thicker that you have the Bondic, the longer you need to hold it on. It will be very difficult for me to film while doing it, just because it'll take it a while to be tedious and you won't be able to see anything because my hands are going to be inside this shell. But essentially I'm going to pour Bondic into the headlight cavity, into the Mars light cavity, into the number board cavity, and I'll do them one at a time. I will then with one hand hold the light in place, and the other hand I will hit it with the UV light to get it in position. I will sometimes then also add a little CA glue around there just to really hold it in place. But the Bondic is great because it's clear, the light comes right through it. I can completely submerge the light in it, and you will see the light through it. So I'm going to get to work on that. Maybe I'll just do one and come back and show you what it looks like. I will then, when I've got them all in, excuse me about that, I will take black paint and paint over the backside of this to prevent all light bleed from coming through and showing into the shell or down onto the track through the chassis. But I'll get to that in a bit. Just attempt to show you this. I've got the light in place with Bondic poured into the cavity for the Mars light. So now I've turned on my UV light, and I'm just going to hit it I like to move it around, make sure I'm getting it from all angles. So I will also actually hit it from the front through the lens. Alright, so it's solidified there, and then I'm just going to hit it here through the lens as well. Alright, and like I mentioned, I will go ahead and put a little bit of CA glue around it just to make sure it's going to hold in place, because it can pop out. But nevertheless, this is a nice solution for just getting the light set in a certain position. And I'm just going to use the CA glue just to secure it a little bit more. I'll do that actually after I have all lights in place. Alright, so now you can see that I have all of the lights glued in. In the top of the cab, I tucked those two chip lights underneath the piece that is represents all the glass, or is all of the glass, and then just put them in with the Bondic. For these others, harder to see, but in each case they are in place with Bondic. So the light, or the number boards, the Mars light, and the headlight are all in place now. Now I will take just some regular black acrylic paint and with a brush and paint over the back side of them to get rid of the bleed that I talked about, with the exception, of course, of the cab light in the top. I'm not going to paint over that. Another thing I'm going to do is to put an engineer in. I have stocked up on a bunch of engineer figures over the years. I have some from a company called Fun and Games that makes some S-scale engineers and brakemen, and then S-Helper produced these years ago, and I have bought a whole stack of these at one point when I found them for sale at Displanes, or online with Displanes Hobbies. So I'm just going to take one of these out. What I do is I will file along the side to kind of flatten it out a bit so that I can glue it to a piece of styrene. So I'm going to take this figure, he's going to sit on the left side, and I will just file down the side here. I will glue down low here. I will glue him onto this piece of styrene, and then I will glue the styrene in place inside the cab there at the right height to where you can see his head through the side window and the front window. Okay, so now I've done what I said I was going to do. I applied the black paint inside. I also glued in the engineer there. You can see him through the window as well. He's in there. So all lights are in place. Black paint to fight the bleed. And now it's time to plug it in and give it a test run, and everything should be fine and we'll be done. So now I have it assembled. I have connected the connector on the top with the shell and the lights to the connector on the chassis, snapped the shell back onto the chassis, and we are ready for a real track test. So let's start it up. Also, I should mention I have programmed the decoder, so it is no longer on its default settings. I won't walk through how I do that, but I basically use JMRI's Decoder Pro on my computer and a test track connected to my computer through an interface, and have set the decoder up now to the way that I want it. It matches my other MKT E8 that I showed you at the beginning of this video, and it is all ready to roll. That program including setting up the Mars light to operate when it moves forward. So let's see if that works. Headlight and the number board lights look good, so here we go. Yep, and there's the Mars light. I've got it with its momentum and acceleration starting up. Now let's let it do a lap and come back around. And this project, folks, is a wrap.